Claude Guillemot, one of Ubisoft's 5 co-founders, died in a plane crash on June 18th. He was 56 years old. This is massive. Ubisoft isn't just any game company. It's the world's largest publicly traded game publisher by market cap, worth over $50 billion, and they make Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Splinter Cell, franchises that defined entire generations of gaming. And one of the architects of that empire is gone. But here's what's surprising. Claude hadn't been the CEO for 15 years. He stepped back from day-to-day operations in 2010, though he stayed on the board and remained a major shareholder. So the question isn't whether Ubisoft falls apart tomorrow. It's what this loss means for a company built by 5 brothers who believed games could be art. Because even though Claude wasn't in the corner office anymore, he was still the soul of Ubisoft. He was there in 1986, when they started in a tiny Paris apartment with nothing but ambition and vision. A founding visionary who shaped an entire industry is now gone. And here's where it gets interesting, because understanding what happens next tells you something profound about how companies live on after their founders. Let's go back to 1986. Paris. 5 brothers, Claude, Michel, Yves, Gérard, and Christophe Guillemot, literally started Ubisoft from nothing in a small apartment. They weren't Stanford dropouts or Silicon Valley billionaires. They were French kids who loved video games and thought they could do better than what already existed. They started by making games for old computers, the Commodore 64, the Atari. Small titles, zero budget, massive hustle. But something was different about the Guillemot brothers. They didn't just want to make games. They wanted to make games as art, to tell stories, to push technology and creativity forward together. That philosophy stuck with them from day one. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Ubisoft grew into a global powerhouse. They didn't just survive the industry's brutal cycles, they thrived through them. Games like Splinter Cell proved that stealth action games could be sophisticated and intelligent. Assassin's Creed became a phenomenon, blending history and fantasy and massive open worlds into something totally new. Claude watched all this unfold. He built it. He shaped the studio's culture, championed bold creativity, and refused to let bean counters turn Ubisoft into just another factory. By 2010, when he stepped down as CEO, Ubisoft was already a legend. Here's the thing about founding a company versus leading it long-term. Most founders think they need to stay in charge forever, but the best ones know when to step back and let the next generation take over. Claude Guillemot did exactly that in 2010. He passed the CEO role to his brother Yves and stayed on as chairman. It was a smart move, kept his influence without micromanaging every decision. Over the next 15 years, Ubisoft became even more ambitious. They expanded globally. They built new blockbuster franchises. They went public on the stock market. They weathered massive industry changes, from disc-based games to digital downloads to free-to-play mobile gaming. Claude wasn't making day-to-day decisions anymore, but his fingerprints were still all over the company. His philosophy of valuing creativity, pushing boundaries, and treating games as art, that was embedded deep in Ubisoft's DNA. And that's actually what makes this loss so significant. It's not just that a CEO died. It's that a founder, a visionary, someone who shaped an entire creative industry, is gone. The person who believed games mattered when nobody else did. And that belief, that vision, it's harder to quantify than quarterly earnings, but it's what gave Ubisoft its soul. Let me give you some perspective on just how big Ubisoft is and what Claude Guillemot helped build. Assassin's Creed alone has sold over 200 million copies worldwide since 2007. That's one franchise. Far Cry, another Ubisoft series, has sold over 80 million copies. Splinter Cell, the stealth action masterpiece that launched in 2002, became a genre-defining classic that inspired countless imitators. Rainbow Six Siege, their competitive multiplayer shooter, has millions of active players every single month. It's still thriving after a decade of updates. And that's just the marquee titles. Ubisoft also created Prince of Persia, The Crew, Watch Dogs, For Honor, and dozens of other franchises. They own game development studios across the globe, in San Francisco, Montreal, Paris, Toronto, London, Berlin. Over 18,000 employees worldwide. The company's revenues top $2 billion every year. Claude Guillemot didn't personally make every decision on these games, obviously. That's not how organizations work at scale. But he created the culture that made those games possible. He hired brilliant people. He protected Ubisoft's independence when bigger companies tried to buy it out. He said yes to weird, risky ideas that turned into masterpieces. So how does this compare to other moments when the video game industry lost a major figure? Well, there have been surprisingly few moments like this. Steve Jobs died in 2011, and Apple lost a visionary, but Apple had already passed the CEO role to Tim Cook years earlier. Nintendo lost Satoru Iwata in 2015, and that was genuinely devastating to the gaming world because he was still actively leading the company day to day. Iwata was 55, a legend gone at his peak. The difference is that Iwata's passing shook Nintendo to its core because he was still at the helm. Claude's situation is different. Ubisoft has had 15 years to build leadership without him as the top executive. Yves Guillemot is still the CEO, another founder is still in charge. That matters enormously. It means the company has succession plans, institutional knowledge, and continuity already built in. But here's the paradox. You can have all the plans in the world, and losing a founder still hurts. It changes something intangible about a company. The person who started it, who believed in it when it was nothing but a dream, who shaped its earliest decisions, that person's absence creates a gap that can't be filled by organizational structure alone. So what actually happens to Ubisoft now? Short answer, probably not much changes operationally. Yves is still the CEO. The leadership team's in place. Games are in development. Franchises continue. The business machine keeps moving forward. But culturally and spiritually, this is a profound moment for reflection. Claude Guillemot was a symbol. He represented the belief that games could be made by artists and dreamers, by people who actually cared about the medium, not just quarterly profit margins. He stood for independence in an industry increasingly dominated by megacorporations that treat games like assembly line products. His death reminds everyone in gaming of something absolutely critical. Founding visions matter. The values you build into a company from day one, those stick around even after you're gone. They're embedded in how people think, how they work, what they believe is worth doing. But here's the real risk right now. If Ubisoft loses sight of that vision, if the company gradually becomes just another quarterly earnings-focused publisher, then something precious is actually lost. Not because Claude isn't running things anymore, but because his influence, his values, his belief that games matter as art, that could fade. And the industry will be watching closely to see if Ubisoft stays true to its roots. Here's how major companies typically handle the loss of a founder or visionary leader. Step 1. Communicate clearly and quickly. Within hours, the board and leadership team put out a statement confirming continuity, expressing deep respect for the founder's legacy, and reassuring all stakeholders, employees, investors, partners, that the business is stable and moving forward. Step 2. Convene the leadership team immediately. Make sure everyone knows their role, their responsibilities, and that critical decisions can still be made efficiently without the founder. Step 3. Honor the founder properly. Most companies hold a memorial service, create a tribute, and make sure the founder's legacy is formally and publicly acknowledged. Step 4. Assess the board situation. If the founder had a board seat, that seat needs to be filled thoughtfully. Decisions about whether to retire that seat or promote someone from within happen during this sensitive period. Step 5. Look forward without losing sight of the past. Companies reaffirm their mission and values. They say, here's what our founder believed, and here's how we're going to honor that while also evolving. Ubisoft's executing this right now. Yves released a statement honoring Claude. The board's intact. The company's not missing a beat operationally, but the deeper work happens next. Claude Guillemot died at 56, and the gaming world lost a true visionary. He wasn't just a CEO or entrepreneur. He was someone who believed video games mattered as an art form when most of the world thought they were frivolous. He and his 4 brothers built something extraordinary from a Paris apartment through sheer belief and creativity. Because they did it right, hired brilliant people, built a strong culture, prepared for the future, Ubisoft will go on. There's a lesson here for anyone building something that lasts. Founders matter, not because they have to run the company forever. Yves proves that's not necessary. They matter because they set the tone from day one. They make calls about what the company values. They say yes to things that are right, even when they are not profitable. And if you do that right, it lasts. It outlives you. Claude Guillemot's legacy isn't just in the games Ubisoft makes. It's embedded in the culture, the independence, the refusal to compromise on creativity. That's what the industry needs to remember. That's what matters. Follow for daily AI news.